Hello and welcome to today's video. So this time we're going to be taking a look through the vintage penguins numbered 1250 up to 1450. Now there's some absolutely fantastic books in this particular run, including, I was very pleased to see, those original 3 Quatermass novels by Nigel Keale, amongst many other classic authors. Some John Wyndham in here, P.G. Wodehouse, I mean the list goes on. So I think you're going to really enjoy today's video. So sit back, relax, and let's get to it. Okay then, so we start this particular run of penguins with number 1251. Who'd have thought we'd be this far into it, sort of a year after we started going through these bit by bit. So this is Helen McCloy, alias Basil Willing. This is a classic crime, of course. 1252, Mischief by Charlotte Armstrong. A couple of quite sort of thin ones. Using just for date purposes, 1957 is when we're looking at when these were first published. This one's in the play series, 1253, and it's 4 modern verse plays. Really nice sort of very 50s design, that, isn't it? A T.S. Eliot play there, The Family Reunion. Good stuff. 1254 is Joseph Conrad's Under Western Eyes. Yeah, great author, Joseph Conrad. Certainly, you know, of all the sort of older sort of classic authors, he's ones that I don't mind reading. Yeah, he's not too bad. It's nice fiction. Now, this is one in the short stories format, and you notice we've had these a couple of times already where they've had that, it's like got a very distinctive cover design for the short stories, and I don't know quite how many there are in this series, but I do really like them. This is the William Sanson short story selection, and yeah, they're really good, these, and we'll see a few of these as we go along over the next few hundred books. In fact, the next 500, 600, 700 even books all kept that short story format, which I really like. So now a classic Agatha Christie title here, one that I'm sure everyone is familiar with. First published, I believe, by Collins back in the 1930s, stroke early 40s, and in the late 40s, Pan got it, and then in 1956 it went to Penguin, which was where it was at for a long time. 1265 then is My Uncle Silas by H.E. Bates. Now this one is one of those ones which comes with the artwork covers, really nice, a nice little change of pace from the traditional Penguin covers of the time. These were designed under the artistic direction of artist Abram Games, and he did a few of the covers himself. Does sometimes say who actually did the covers to these inside. Artisoni did the internal illustrations on this one, and he's obviously great. But sometimes it does give us the cover artist, not in this particular case, and I have a feeling. Still the first edition. That feels like a rebound first edition, if that makes sense, where they've got older stock and they've put that into it, but I don't know for sure. But yeah, really nice, the illustrated jackets, and something a little bit different. Here's another one. So this one is number 1267. It's another one in the Abram Games directed picture covers, and of course it's a Western here, The Big Range by Jack Schaefer. Now, Westerns were all the rage around this sort of time. There's lots of TV shows with Westerns on, and other publishers were doing very great business with Western books. Pan certainly had their share of them. Panther, all the other sort of publishers had Western titles. So Penguin thought, well, maybe we ought to get a few, and they did do a handful, but I just don't think they sold very well. Penguin weren't exactly known for that sort of fiction, that sort of genre fiction. So, you know, I guess they didn't really do many more. Eric Linklater, One in China. This is the author's own experiences when he went to China. Very prolific, Eric Linklater, but not a name you sort of hear very often these days. P.G. Wodehouse, one of my favourites, of course. This is number 1272, The Man Upstairs. These are the period now where they've got a small illustration on the front. Another Wodehouse here, 1273, Uneasy Money. I love all the Wodehouse books. I think they are absolute classics. Some better than others, of course. Here's a slightly lower grade Abram Games cover, another color jacket. I believe this one is possibly a reprint with the illustrated cover on. Let's have a look here. No, this is still the first edition. Some of these ones with the covers, the illustrated covers, only come as reprints. So if you do only collect first edition books, you're going to miss out on a few of those. But once again, quite a very, very distinctive design there. Good stuff. I mentioned in my last video, I am going to do a dedicated video to all the Abram Games covers in the future. So do look out for that. I think I've pretty much got them all. This is one of my favourites, Pierre Clostermann, The Big Show, and this is a war memoir. Very, very nice jacket, this one I really, really like. Got a photo insert. This one, he was a Second World War pilot. Good stuff. 1297 is The Door Between, Ellery Queen, a bit more classic crime. Ellery Queen was, of course, Frederick Danae and Manfred Lee. It's a collaboration. Number 1300 then is an early science fiction title. They didn't do a lot. This really is one of the early ones. They hadn't done a lot up to this point, Penguin, to be honest. And John Christopher, this was one of his very early ones, The Death of Grass. Christopher would go on to do the Tripods trilogy, of course. But there's one of his early ones there, number 1300. Another one in the short story format. Definitely love these, and this includes the Complete the Time Machine, which isn't actually that long a story. So they've got that with 4 other, and a few other H.G. Wells books. Obviously, he was very, very prolific, wasn't he? So the Time Machine is only 84, from page 7 to page 84, and after that, lots of other shorter stories. I still think the Time Machine and the Invisible Man are both fantastic works. This is a movie tie-in, I believe. Colette, Gigi and the Cat. Now, this is the film version of Gigi, based on the novel by Colette. Gigi, Leslie Caron, Maurice Chevalier, Louise Jordan. Not many names that I know there, but an early Penguin film tie-in, and they didn't do that many of those, to be honest. There's only a handful of movie tie-ins in the main list. One of a couple of Gerald Durrells we'll see. Durrell was just becoming, he was already well established alongside people like David Attenborough, but his books were fantastic, and he never sort of did the TV shows, but Penguin really went to town on them, and they make a very, very nice set. If you're looking for that sort of a book, the Gerald Durrells in Penguin First Edition are excellent. They're highly, highly recommended, and we'll see his most famous one a little bit later on, which is fantastic. Confessions of Felix Krull, Confidence Man. Don't know much about that one, actually, to be honest. That was 1320. 1322 is James Thurber's Dogs. He was the cartoonist, of course. Now, later cartoon books will be in the larger B format. This one's a bit of a mixture between illustrations and text. But later on, and we haven't had any yet, but they're coming up, they'll be slightly larger, the B format Penguin illustrated cartoon books, and they're really good, and there are people who collect those just in their own right because they're so much fun. So I definitely do recommend those. So this is 1325, and this is selected essays of Hilaire Belloc. Now, these were part of a little run of Hilaire Belloc's that they did, and Penguin would often do that, where they published like 5 or even 10 of an author, sometimes just a trio. I believe these were all published simultaneously. There's a little list, 5 of the 11 Hilaire Belloc books that were published, and they used this little device, the HB device on the front, to sort of make them stand out a little bit on the shelf. They did it with a few other authors, notably Ernest Hemingway. I think Aldous Huxley had his own like little emblem as well. So they're worth pointing out, those. Here's another one here. So The Path to Rome, 1326. I believe these are very, very common to find these days, and I reckon they had huge print runs, you know. The Cruise of the Noah, 1327. A description of adventurous sailing in a 10-ton cutter, with meditations on many aspects of life. 1329, 2,000 fathoms down. 2,000 fathoms down. 1335, Don't Go Near the Water, William Brinkley. These are just straightforward fiction titles. David Garnett, Aspects of Love, 1337. Set in Venice, Paris, and the French countryside. You'll notice I've not got every book in the run, of course. I specialise in the first sort of 1,000 penguins, but I do collect between 1,001 and 3,300, something like that, just prior to ISBN. So there will be plenty of these videos and hopefully some really interesting books as we go through time. Looking through some of the 60s ones recently, I was amazed at how bold and bright and different they are to these. So we are still in for a fascinating journey, that's for sure. The Frenchman and the Lady, 1339, Elizabeth Cadell. 1342, Kathleen Ferrier, Her Life by Winifred Ferrier, and a memoir edited by Neville Cardus. You think traditionally that would have been in the blue sort of biography covers, but maybe they've been dropped by this point. Another one in the short stories series. I said we'd see a few more of these because I do absolutely love them. This is the W.W. Jacobs selected short stories. Once again, his most famous work, well, arguably his most famous one, The Monkey's Paw, is the top billing there. Great story, that one. Another one in the same one, M.R. James, famous for the ghost stories and more ghost stories. Very thin little volume, that. Once again, that is one that they must have pinched from Pan, you know, or the rights to it from Pan. 1351 is a bit of a tatty old copy of the Aldous Huxley Doors of Perception and Heaven and Hell. But I believe that is the first printing of it. Yeah, 1959. Don't mind Huxley at all, actually. Read him a long time ago, but they were all right, as I recall. 1353 then, another crime one, The Sleeper, Holly Roth. 1355, Angus Wilson, The Wrong Set. Start another pile over there. 1363, a Simenon, Maygray's Revolver. Now, I am planning on doing a couple of Simenon videos. Now, I don't really know whether to do like Simenon in vintage paperback. There would be enough just to do them in Penguin, although I don't think I've quite got them all. But I'm not that far short, I don't think. So look out for that one. It's definitely going to happen this year. My Fair Lady, 1364, which is Alan J. Lerner. I believe this is what the this was the original play, which became the movie later on, as far as I know, that one. Nice copy of that as well. 1365 then, Compton Mackenzie, Hunting the Fairies. On to Wodehouse, 1370, Dr. Sally. I have done a P.G. Wodehouse in vintage paperback video. Definitely a fan. 1371, The Little Nugget. Another Wodehouse. 1377, Earl Stanley Gardner, another author who's definitely going to be having a video dedicated to them. Perhaps not in Penguin, but I'll do the Penguin and Pans together. I think that might be a bit more worthy. The case of the perjured parrot. 1381 then is Destination Chungking. And 1384, a slight change now in the design of the green, where they've gone, if you imagine this one just a year before, so you've still got the triptych 3 bands, but the list is starting to get ever so slightly modernised towards the end of the 1950s into the 1960s. So this is Docken Dead. An archaeologist turns detective in a puzzling military mystery. John Trench. And then we've got another one by one of my top 5 favourite authors, John Wyndham, and this is The Seeds of Time. Now, these were short stories, which I believe were pulled from the pages of like Astounding Science Fiction, things like that. So it's not a full novel. It is, some of the best of his other sort of sci-fi stroke stories with a twist work, which had appeared in like Astounding Science Fiction and Analog, things like that over the years. So 1389 then, starting our last little pile, Magnus Merriman. Another one by Eric Linklater. Interesting little cover there. Ever so small, these illustrations, but they are starting to creep in on the penguin jackets of this sort of period. I think it is really interesting to see. 1390, another one by Linklater, The Impregnable Woman. 1390. 1392 is Ransom of the Angel by David Dodge. Yeah, To Catch a Thief was the famous one that he did. This is interesting. So the hearts were young and gay. Really, so they've sort of integrated the title in between those little tiny little illustrations. There's a lot going on in that cover. That's probably one of the most detailed covers we've seen for quite some time from Penguin, and illustrated in between as well, sort of fitting with the cover design there. And we're still just in the very end of 1959, so not quite into the 60s just yet. The Plague and I, Betty MacDonald. 1395 is The Sea Mystery, Freeman Wills Crofts, a classic crime author, and that one in the old style again. So we are in that transition period on the crime books between the two designs. This is another beautiful early Gerald Durrell, My Family and Other Animals, perhaps his most famous book, to be honest, and I'm glad to see they've spent a bit of time on the cover there. It didn't last too long, this edition. There he is on the back. Obviously, this is more autobiographical, his time growing up in Malta. Number 1400 is a Raymond Chandler, The Long Goodbye. Great stuff. Chandler's excellent, as I'm sure you know. Now, this one seems very much out of place, number 1408, by Roy Vickers. Now, I believe this is a case, because we've got a much later design, like a 60s design. This one was filled in. So this is actually dated 1965. So this design is very much what we've got to come up on our videos later on. But the number must have been assigned very, very early on, because it's still the first Penguin printing of number 1408, but they've gone back and used that number. But it was probably assigned back in the late 50s, 1959, 1960. It took 5 years till the finished book came to print. And then when it did, it wasn't until the mid-60s. So the next one we got is 1417, The Beckoning Lady, Marjorie Allingham. Back to the more updated style here. This is a Campion novel. I always remember enjoying the Campion series with Peter Davison, although I don't think it did that well, unfortunately. 1419, another Simenon, My Friend Maigret. And these are really great. I know they've all been recently, they've done some new translations and been reprinted by Penguin now with the different translations. But I really like the original ones. I don't find them hard going at all. 1421 then is the first of three fantastic Penguin Nigel Neals. Now, Nigel Neale was a television writer, amongst other things, and these are the scripts for the BBC, early BBC TV drama. This is the very, very first one, the Quatermass Experiment. It was, of course, reworked into a Hammer horror movie. 1424 is 1066 and all that. So the historical one there with some pictures. Then we've got 1429, Cage Me a Peacock, Noel Langley. Quite a nice little one there with the illustration on the front. That was 1429. 1431 is In Search of England, H.V. Morton. Yeah, this looks quite interesting as well, actually. Like a sort of historical travel, but it's in the orange banner, so I don't really know where this is coming from because it's actually confusing, even to me. 1435 then, so this is another one where they've used the author's initials, William Faulkner, into a small logo to recognise that author on the shelf, possibly. Requiem for a Nun, William Faulkner. Then we got 1437, which is The Dud Avocado, Elaine Dundee. Now, the next one's quite interesting because I've got two copies of it, and it's Boana Junction. Now, this is the paperback, and one of them has been, this is the normal paperback first by John Masters. Big, thick book, this one. And it is the first print from 1960. And what happens when you collect paperbacks long enough, you do come across these. This has been bound up for a library, so it's taken the original Penguin. There wouldn't have been a hardback of this initially, so they put it into like a hardback library binding. So I guess they stripped the cover off, bound it up. You can see like the remnants of a public library stamp there. And there we are. Look, where's it come from? Smethwick Public Libraries. There you go. How did that make its way down into my collection? I don't know. But still, it's the same book, look, published in 1960. So it really is. It's just a little variation. And when I come across books like that, I've got like a couple of odd pans and things like that. When I come across books like that, I always tend to pick them up because I think they're a bit of fun. And this is another book I've got two copies of because it's by one of my favourite authors, and that's, of course, John Wyndham. So this is the Midwich Cuckoos. Oh, this is a great book, this one. This was the first Penguin printing of this one in 1960. So that's that. And then, of course, it did get made into the movie The Village of the Damned, George Saunders and Barbara Shelley. Exactly the same number, but this was the later film tie-in adaptation that Penguin put out. And this was 1961. So this is just the very next year, but Penguin took advantage of the publicity that the movie was going to get and did their own version of it. If you've never read that, I rank it up there in the top 3 or 4 John Wyndham's. I've got Triffids, Krakenwakes, Trouble with Lichen, and that one. I think they're my top 4. Another absolute classic, and this would be going on to be published by Penguin for many, but still in print today, of course, Iris Murdoch's Under the Net, a very famous novel. That was at 1445. 1449 and 1448 virtually go together. And these are the last two we'll look at today. And it's 2 more Nigel Neals, Quatermass 2 and Quatermass and the Pit. So once again, these are the serials. I got some stills inside as well. Very, very good stuff. Published 1960. It was a paperback original, this. As you can see, it says there in the front, a play for television in 6 parts. It did, of course, get made by Hammer, as did this one in the 1967, Quatermass and the Pit. Of the 3, this is my favourite Quatermass book, the Quatermass and the Pit one. I just love them. I think they are absolutely fantastic. And the prices of these have actually started to creep up. So if you do see these, do keep an eye out for them. Now, I noticed the cover illustration is by Brian Neal. So I wonder if that's any relation to Nigel Neale. I'm just seeing if it says the same on this one. Penguin were very good at naming their illustrators. Yeah, it's same. So that can't be coincidence that the cover was by Brian Neal and the books were by Nigel Neale. Maybe it was a relation. So that's 1448 and 1449. And that concludes today's look at the vintage Penguin paperbacks. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed this latest video. If you have, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button. Do please consider subscribing if you're not already for regular vintage paperback content. And I shall look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye.